In the far reaches of the galaxy, there lay a brilliant planet known as Zaranth, under twin suns that shone every day. The land sparkled with ancient wonders and modern marvels. The people of Zaranth believed that strength and courage were the most important qualities in life. They trusted their leaders to protect them and guide them through hard times. At the heart of this mighty world stood a grand palace built from smooth stone and shining metal. Inside its high walls lived Princess Kalis, a leader known far and wide for her fearless spirit and strong will. From a very young age, Kalis had trained in the art of combat. Every morning, she practiced with her sword and shield until she became swift and sure in her movements. Her bright eyes and steady gaze told everyone that she was not a princess to be taken lightly. Despite her skill in battle, Kalis was also a caring and kind ruler. She often walked among her people in the busy streets of the capital. In simple, friendly words, she listened to their hopes and worries. The citizens of Zaranth admired her not only because of her fighting skills, but also because she showed them respect and warmth. To them, Kalis was a symbol of strength and compassion, a rare blend that made her stand out among rulers. The princess had been raised with a firm belief: only strength could ensure safety and honor. Her father, the old king, had always taught her that victory in battle was the only true measure of a leader. In the royal court, many wise advisors echoed this view. They spoke of ancient battles, great warriors, and the honor that came from fighting bravely. Kalis listened to their words, feeling proud of the tradition she was meant to carry on. Yet, sometimes, when the palace was quiet and the twin suns began to set, Kalis would stand on her balcony and gaze out over her land. In those quiet moments, she felt a small stirring of doubt about the idea that might was all that mattered. She wondered if there was more to strength than just winning battles. The soft rustle of the evening breeze and the distant murmur of her people made her heart beat with both pride and a gentle curiosity about the world beyond the old ways. As the first light of dawn painted the sky with warm colors, Princess Kalis stepped forward to face another day of duty. She believed in the power of her people and in the traditions that had shaped her. Yet deep inside, a new journey was beginning to stir, a journey that would soon challenge everything she had ever known about strength and leadership. Unbeknownst to her, the future held surprises that would show her true power came not only from battle, but also from wisdom, kindness, and the courage to embrace new ideas. Thus, in the golden light of the rising sun, Zaranth and its brave princess prepared for a day filled with promise and change. On a bright morning, the royal spaceship from Zaranth landed on the soft, green plains of Kilaris, a neighboring planet known for its gentle beauty and calm people. Princess Kalis had come on a diplomatic mission to build a bridge of peace between her people and the Kilarians. Though she was known for her strength and fearless spirit, today she carried an open mind, ready to listen and learn. The Kilarian leaders gathered in a large, circular hall built from smooth stone and glass. Their voices were soft, but full of wisdom. At the center of the gathering stood Captain Elias, a human explorer. Unlike many of his kind, Elias had a gentle smile and calm eyes that showed both kindness and strength. When Princess Kalis stepped forward, he bowed respectfully and greeted her with a firm, warm handshake. "Welcome to Kilaris," Elias said in simple, clear words. "We are honored by your visit." Kalis listened carefully. She was used to a world where respect was earned through power and bravery. Yet the friendly tone in Elias's voice made her wonder if there could be a different kind of strength, a strength found in understanding and peace. As the meeting began, the Kilarian leaders shared stories about their long history of art, nature, and community. They spoke of how caring for each other had made their society strong. Captain Elias added that the human way of life also celebrated small acts of kindness and cooperation. His words were simple, yet they carried a deep truth that resonated with everyone in the hall. Princess Kalis felt a stirring inside her. Though she had been raised to value victory in battle, the calm sincerity of Elias's voice made her think about the power of compassion and friendship. She asked questions about human traditions and how they built trust among people. Elias answered with honesty, explaining that every small act of kindness helped to build a greater whole, much like individual stars that come together to form a bright, shining sky. The conversation grew lively, and soon many Kilarian leaders began to see that strength did not only come from fighting or force. They saw that understanding each other and working together could also bring a strong, lasting peace. Kalis observed the way the Kilarians listened to Elias, and she felt a deep respect for the human explorer who spoke with such clarity and care. As the meeting ended, the princess and the captain stood side by side. Both knew that this encounter was more than a simple meeting. It was the start of a new way of thinking. In that moment, Princess Kalis began to understand that true power could come from openness and empathy, not just from might and battle. On the soft plains of Kilaris, under a sky filled with promise, the seeds of a new alliance were planted. The fateful encounter between a fearless princess and a gentle human explorer had set them on a path that might one day change the fate of both their worlds. Inside the great hall of Kilaris, the mood grew tense as discussions took a new turn. The Kilarian leaders, gathered in a spacious room with high curved ceilings and large, clear windows, listened carefully as Princess Kalis and Captain Elias began to share their views. The air was filled with a mix of excitement and worry as two very different ideas clashed. Princess Kalis, with her strong voice and firm gaze, spoke first. She told the crowd that true strength came from ancient traditions and mighty battles. For her, honor was earned by showing power and bravery on the field of war. Our people have survived for generations because we have always defended them with force and courage, she said. Her words were bold and filled with passion, and many in the hall nodded, recalling the proud history of her world. When Kalis finished, Captain Elias stepped forward. His voice was calm and measured, and his eyes shone with a gentle light. I believe that strength can also come from kindness and unity, he said. We must learn to work together, to listen, and to trust one another. Even the smallest act of care can bring people together and build a future filled with hope. His ideas were new and different, and they caused a ripple of surprise among those who were used to hearing only stories of battle and might. As the conversation continued, the clash of ideals became clear. Princess Kalis felt that Elias' ideas were too soft, almost weak. She argued that without power and discipline, a leader could not protect their people. In my world, she said firmly, a leader must show strength and be ready to fight. Words alone will not keep our enemies at bay. Elias, on the other hand, gently countered that strength could be found in compassion and cooperation. Sometimes the strongest force is the one that heals, not harms, he explained, and by working together, we can create a bond that no enemy can break. The hall grew quiet as the leaders absorbed both points of view. Many of the Kilarians remembered their own long history of art, science, and gentle ways of living. They wondered if perhaps there was room for both ideas to guide them. Outside, the soft breeze of Kilaris seemed to whisper of change and new beginnings. In that moment, it became clear that the meeting was more than just a debate. It was a turning point. Both Princess Kalis and Captain Elias had deep beliefs, but they also showed a willingness to listen to each other. Their clash was not meant to hurt, but to find a better way for all their people. As the discussion slowly ended, a promise of future cooperation began to take root. Both leaders agreed that while their ideas were different, they could work together to combine strength with kindness. In the quiet that followed, the seeds of a new path were planted. The meeting left everyone with the hope that by mixing the old ways of honor with new ways of understanding, a stronger and kinder future could be built for both their worlds. As the suns of Kilaris set, casting a golden glow over the landscape, Princess Kalis found herself standing at the edge of the great balcony, her thoughts troubled. The meeting had been intense, filled with words she was not used to hearing. Kindness, unity, cooperation. These were ideas that seemed weak compared to the strength and discipline she had been raised to respect. Yet, Captain Elias had not seemed weak. His eyes held a different kind of strength, one that did not rely on weapons or combat. Kalis could not understand it, but she also could not ignore it. That night, as the leaders of Kiluris discussed future plans, a sudden alarm rang through the palace halls. A distress signal flickered on the main screen. A nearby colony had been attacked by raiders from the dark regions of space. These were ruthless beings who destroyed everything in their path, taking resources and leaving behind nothing but ruin. Kalis's instincts took over. "We must send our warriors immediately," she declared, gripping the hilt of her sword. But Elias stepped forward, his face calm yet firm. "Wait. If we rush in without a plan, more lives will be lost. Let me try something different first." Kalis frowned. To her, action was the only solution. Delaying meant showing weakness, but the Kilarian leaders were already listening to Elias, nodding at his suggestion to negotiate first. Despite her doubts, Kalis agreed to let Elias try, though she had little hope it would work. Together, they boarded a diplomatic vessel and set course for the attacked colony. As they neared the site, the damage was clear. Homes burned, crops ruined, and frightened families hiding in the rubble. Kalis's anger flared. This is why kindness is useless. The only way to stop this is through force. Elias, however, remained calm. He activated the ship's communication channel and broadcast a message to the raiders. His voice was steady, confident. "You've already taken what you wanted. There is no need for further destruction. If you leave now, we will not pursue. But if you continue, we will stand united against you." For a long moment, silence filled the air. Kalis doubted they would listen. Raiders respected nothing but power. But then, unexpectedly, the enemy ships turned away, disappearing into the dark sky. Kalis stared in disbelief. How? They ran without a fight. Elias smiled slightly. Not all battles need to be fought with weapons. Kalis had no words. This was the first time she had seen strength in a form other than combat. Though she was not ready to accept it fully, she felt something shift inside her. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to leadership than she had been taught. As they returned to Kiluris, Kalis realized something even more troubling. She was beginning to respect Elias, and that, more than anything, left her uncertain of what was to come. The journey back to Kiluris was silent. Princess Kalis sat in her seat, arms crossed, her mind swirling with thoughts. The raiders had retreated without a single weapon being fired. She had never seen anything like it before. In her world, strength was always proven in battle, yet Elias had won without lifting a sword. As they stepped off the ship, Kalis turned to Elias. "You knew they would run?" she asked, her voice filled with doubt. Elias shook his head. "No, but I knew that sometimes fear and desperation drive people to attack. If you give them a way out, they might take it." Kalis frowned. "But what if they didn't? What if they fought back?" "Then we would have been ready," Elias replied simply. "Strength is not about fighting first. It's about knowing when to fight and when not to." His words stayed with her as the days passed. Kalis watched Elias closely, trying to understand him. Unlike warriors from her home, he didn't try to prove his strength through combat. Instead, he helped the people of Kiluris rebuild. She saw him lifting heavy beams, repairing homes, and even comforting frightened children. He worked with patience, his hands as steady as his voice. One afternoon, Kalis approached an elder Kilarian woman who had been observing Elias as well. "What do you think of the human?" Kalis asked. The old woman smiled. "He reminds me of the great healers of our past. Not all strength is seen in battle, child. Sometimes, the strongest ones are those who mend what is broken instead of breaking more." Kalis remained silent. She had never thought of strength that way before. That night, she stood on the palace balcony, watching the twin moons rise over the city. She had always believed herself to be strong. She had trained harder than anyone, won every duel, and led armies into battle. But now she was beginning to question everything. Elias joined her, leaning on the balcony rail. "You seem lost in thought," he said. Kalis hesitated, then admitted, "I don't understand you, human. You do not act like a warrior, yet you have strength. You do not seek battle, yet you win. How?" Elias smiled. "Because strength is not one thing, princess. It's many things. It's knowing when to stand firm and when to step back. It's having the courage to trust others. It's not just about winning. It's about making sure others don't have to fight in the first place." Kalis stared at him, the wind playing with her dark hair. For the first time in her life, she felt as if she was looking at the world from a different view. Perhaps, she thought, true strength was not just about power. Perhaps it was about wisdom, kindness, and the ability to inspire others. And perhaps, just perhaps, this human had something to teach her after all. The days passed, and Princess Kalis found herself watching Captain Elias more closely. Every time she thought she had understood him, he did something that surprised her. He was unlike any leader she had ever known. One afternoon, she saw him working alongside the Kilarian villagers, helping rebuild homes destroyed in the raid. His hands were covered in dust, his shirt soaked with sweat, but he did not stop. He laughed with the workers, encouraged them when they were tired, and even took breaks to play with the children. Kalis could not understand it. She had always believed that a leader must stand above the people, must be stronger, untouchable. Yet Elias was right there among them, as if he were one of them. Finally, curiosity won over. She approached him as he wiped sweat from his brow. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "You are a leader. You could simply give orders and let others work." Elias smiled. "A leader is not above the people. A leader is part of them. If I ask them to work hard, I must be willing to do the same." Kalis frowned. "But respect is earned through power. If you act as their equal, will they still follow you?" Elias chuckled. "Respect is not just about power. It's about trust. People follow those they believe in, not just those they fear. If they see that I am willing to stand beside them, they will trust me more." Kalis had never thought about leadership that way before. She had always worked to be the strongest, the bravest. But as she looked around at the Kilarians, she saw something different. They looked at Elias not with fear or forced loyalty, but with genuine admiration. That night, Kalis stood outside the palace, thinking. Her whole life, she had followed her father's teachings. Strength was everything. Power kept order. But Elias had shown her another way. He had not used a sword, yet he had protected the people. He had not given orders, yet the Kilarians followed him willingly. The next morning, Kalis made a decision. She walked down to the village, where workers were preparing to rebuild another home. Without a word, she picked up a heavy beam and lifted it onto her shoulder. The workers stopped and stared. One of them hesitated. "Princess, you don't need to." "I do," she said firmly. "If I am to protect my people, I must understand them." Slowly, the workers smiled and nodded. They welcomed her among them, treating her not as a distant ruler, but as one of their own. For the first time in her life, Kalis felt something different, respect that did not come from fear, but from connection. As she worked, she caught Elias watching her with a knowing smile. She did not say anything, but she knew he understood. She was learning, and for the first time, she was willing to. As the sun rose over Kilaris, the once broken village was slowly coming back to life. The people worked together, rebuilding homes, clearing debris, and planting fresh crops. Princess Kalis had never spent this much time among ordinary citizens before. At first, they had been hesitant around her, unsure how to act. But as days passed, they saw her carrying heavy beams, hammering nails, and even helping to cook meals. For the first time in her life, Kalis felt something she had never known, true connection. It was not based on fear or power, but on trust and respect. But not everyone was pleased. Late one evening, As Kellis walked back toward the palace, a familiar voice stopped her. It was General Varrock, one of her father's most trusted commanders. A warrior as strong as steel, he had trained Kellis since childhood, shaping her into the fighter she was today. His sharp eyes studied her as if she had become a stranger. "Princess," he said, his tone heavy with disapproval, "I have watched you these past days. You are spending too much time with these weak people." Kellis frowned. "Weak? They have survived an attack, rebuilt their homes, and stood strong for their families. How is that weakness?" Varrock scoffed. "Because they do not fight. They bow, they yield, they seek peace instead of victory. And this human, Elias, has filled your mind with strange ideas. A princess does not work among commoners. She leads from above." Kellis felt a flare of anger. A true leader understands their people. They do not rule from a throne and call it strength. Elias has shown me that leadership is more than just power. Varrock's expression darkened. "Your father would not have agreed." Kellis clenched her fists. She had spent her whole life following her father's teachings. Be strong, be fearless, never show weakness. But now she questioned if that was the only way. Varrock stepped closer. "Princess, listen to me. You are meant to be a warrior queen, not a worker, not a diplomat. Do not let this human change who you are." For a moment, doubt crept into Kellis's mind. Was she making a mistake? Had she abandoned her father's teachings too easily? Then she thought of Elias, of how he had won the respect of the people, how he had stopped the raiders without spilling blood, how he had shown her a new kind of strength. Kellis met Varrock's gaze. "I am not changing who I am. I am becoming more than I was." Varrock's eyes flickered with something unreadable, disappointment, perhaps, or warning. "Then I hope, Princess, that you do not regret this path." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Kellis standing under the stars, her heart pounding. Tensions were rising, and she knew that soon she would have to prove whether her new path was truly the right one, or whether she had made a terrible mistake. The night was quiet, but Kellis's mind was not. General Varrock's words echoed in her head. Was she truly making the right choice? Had she strayed too far from her father's teachings? As she walked through the village, she saw Elias sitting by a small fire, speaking softly with a group of Kilarian elders. He listened carefully, nodding as they spoke. There was no arrogance in his posture, no demand for respect, only patience and understanding. Kellis took a deep breath and stepped forward. The elders welcomed her warmly, making space for her by the fire. "You seem troubled," Elias said, his gaze steady. Kellis hesitated, then spoke honestly. "General Varrock believes I am losing my way, that I am forgetting what it means to be strong." Elias thought for a moment before replying. "Strength is not just about fighting, Kellis. It's about knowing when to fight and when to build. You are not losing your way. You are expanding it." She looked into the fire, her thoughts swirling. But what if my people do not accept this? What if they only respect power? Elias smiled slightly. "Then show them a new kind of power." Before Kellis could respond, a sharp alarm echoed through the village. A scout rushed forward, breathing heavily. "Princess, raiders are returning. This time, they have brought a fleet." Kellis's heart pounded. She had no time to think, only act. She turned to Elias. "This is it. We cannot negotiate this time. We must be ready." Elias nodded. "Then let's give them a fight they won't forget." The village sprang into action. Kellis organized the warriors, positioning them along the outskirts while Elias worked with the villagers, setting traps and barriers. This time, it was not just warriors who would defend Kilaris. It was everyone. As the raiders' ships landed, the battle began. Kellis fought with the skill and fury of a true warrior, her blade cutting through the enemy ranks. But something was different. She was not just fighting to win. She was fighting to protect. Elias, though not as skilled in combat, used his wits to outmaneuver the enemy. He led small teams through hidden paths, striking where the raiders least expected. The battle raged on, but the combined strength of warriors and villagers turned the tide. The raiders, caught off guard by the unity and determination of the people, began to retreat. As the last enemy ship flowed into the night sky, cheers erupted across the village. They had won, not through brute force alone, but through strategy, unity, and courage. Kalis stood in the center of it all, breathing heavily. She looked at Elias, who smiled at her, nodding in silent approval. For the first time, she truly understood. Strength was not just about power. It was about leadership, wisdom, and the will to protect what mattered. And in that moment, she knew this was the kind of leader she wanted to be. The battle was over, but its impact remained. The village of Kilaris stood victorious, not because of strength alone, but because of unity. The people had fought together, side by side, warriors and villagers alike. They had defended their home with more than just weapons, with courage, strategy, and trust in one another. Princess Kalis stood at the heart of it all, her sword still in her grip, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. The fire of battle still burned in her veins, but something inside her had changed. She had led not through fear, but through inspiration. And for the first time, she saw that strength was not limited to warriors alone. Elias walked up to her, brushing dirt from his uniform. He smiled. "Not bad, princess. You didn't just win a battle. You won the hearts of your people." Kalis turned, watching the villagers cheer, embracing one another. Even the warriors, hardened by years of training, stood among them, no longer separate. They were all one now. "I never thought I would see this," Kalis admitted, her voice softer than usual. "For so long, I believed that only warriors could bring victory. But today, the people of Kilaris showed me another way." Elias crossed his arms, nodding. "A leader isn't just someone who fights, Kalis. A leader is someone who brings people together, who makes them stronger by uniting them." She looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time, not just as a human, not just as an outsider, but as someone who had taught her something invaluable. The next morning, the Kilarian elders gathered to honor those who had fought. In the ceremony, Kalis stood tall, addressing the people with a voice that carried strength and certainty. "This victory does not belong to me alone," she said. "It belongs to every single one of you, to the warriors who fought with skill, to the villagers who refused to surrender, and to those who believed that together we could stand against any enemy." She paused, looking at Elias. "I came to this planet believing that strength meant power, that true leadership was about standing above others, but I was wrong. Strength is also found in wisdom, in unity, and in trust. It is found in knowing when to fight and when to build." The crowd listened in silence, hanging onto every word. Even General Varrock, standing at the edge of the ceremony, looked at her with something close to approval. Elias gave her a knowing nod, as if to say, "You understand now." As the ceremony ended, Kalis looked at the rising sun. She had come to Kilaris as a warrior, but she would leave as something more. She was still strong, still fearless. But now she was wise. And for the first time in her life, she felt ready to lead not just with her sword, but with her heart. The twin suns of Kilaris rose over the victorious land, casting a golden light on the people who had fought together. The village was no longer just a settlement. It was a symbol of resilience, unity, and newfound strength. Princess Kalis stood at the top of the palace steps, looking down at the people. Just days ago, she had believed that strength came only from power, that leadership was about standing above others. But now she knew better. Elias stood beside her, arms crossed, watching the people with a satisfied expression. "So, Princess," he said with a teasing smile, "do you still think kindness is weakness?" Kalis smirked. "No, kindness, wisdom, and unity. They are strengths I never understood before, but I do now." Elias nodded. "Good. Because a leader who understands that can change the future. Kalis took a deep breath. It was time to make a decision, not just for herself, but for her people. She turned to General Varrock, who stood in his usual firm stance, watching her closely. "I know you had doubts, General," she said, meeting his gaze, "and I do not blame you. But I ask you now, do you see what I see? That our strength does not come only from warriors, but from the hearts of all our people." Varrock was silent for a moment. Then, to her surprise, he gave a small nod. "You have proven yourself, Princess. You fought with honor, but you also led with wisdom. Perhaps our people need both." A sense of victory filled Kalis, not the kind won by war, but the kind won by change. The Kilarian elders approached her, their faces filled with gratitude. "Princess," one of them said, "this battle was not just a fight. It was a lesson for all of us. Your leadership has given us a new future." Kalis turned to Elias. "You were right, human. Strength is many things. And today, I feel stronger than ever." Elias grinned. "Then I'd say my work here is done." She raised an eyebrow. "Leaving so soon?" "I have more places to see, more lessons to teach," he said, stretching his arms. "But don't worry, Princess. I have a feeling our paths will cross again." Kalis smirked. "You'd better hope they do." As Elias prepared to leave, Kalis stood at the highest balcony, watching as his ship took off into the sky. She had come to Kilaris as a warrior, but she was leaving as a leader who understood the true meaning of strength. The universe was vast, filled with unknown challenges and opportunities, but Kalis was no longer afraid. She was ready to face whatever came next, not just with her sword, but with her wisdom, her people, and the lesson she had learned from one fearless human. And so, under the twin suns of Kilaris, a new era began. One where strength was not just about power, but about unity, courage, and the will to change the world for the better.